He settled with coins, rarely spoke a word, just coffee, plain, no sugar. She saw in the frayed coat and serene gaze, offering warmth without expecting anything in return. Then one day, Hedis appeared. No farewell, no sign. Days later, she unfolded a newspaper, and what she read made her fingers tremble. What seemed a small gesture became the start of something far greater than she ever dreamed. Hit like and comment where you were tuning in from. Your support brings more heartfelt stories. Now, let's dive in. The bell above the door chimed gently, ushering in a breeze of chilly air and scent of fuel. Sophie glanced up from behind the counter, her hands still polishing a jam jar. It was just past 7 a.m., and Maple Grove Diner was slowly stirring. The aroma of sizzling bacon and slightly charred toast hung beneath flickering overhead lights. With a nearly empty pot of dark coffee steaming softly on the burner, she noticed him instantly. Tall, lean, late 50s or early 60s, worn canvas jacket, boots caked with dry dirt, and a hat that had weathered countless dons. He moved deliberately, not from frailty, but from years that taught him to take his time. Without speaking, Hess slipped into the last booth by the window, facing the open road. Sophie approached Ed with a warm smile. "Morning, sir. What can I get you?" He didn't glance at the menu. "Just coffee, plain, no sugar, right away." She brought the mug and placed it gently, her smile kind but genuine. He nodded once in gratitude and gazed out the window, watching rigs pass in the far-off highway. No phone, no newspaper, just quiet and steam curling from his cup. 15 minutes drifted by. He drank slowly, now and then tracing the ring finger on his left hand, where a faint mark suggested an untold tale. His eyes, weathered yet soft, seemed to carry the weight of miles traveled and stories unspoken. When he rose to leave, he said nothing, just left a small pile of coins, quarters, dimes, a few nickels unfeedable, and headed for the door. Soft-eyed the coins, her brow slightly creased. She recognized that look. A long haul with too few loads. A man driving empty, burning more gas than he could spare. Tough week, she asked softly, her voice carrying a gentle concern as he reached the door. He paused, nodded once, his eyes briefly meeting hers with a flicker of gratitude, then exited. Back at the counter, she picked up the bill and jotted the total, but instead of ringing it up, she wrote in neat cursive, "Paid B.S." The cook raised an eyebrow, his spatula pausing mid-flip. Sophie did it explain. Some kindnesses, she felt, needed no receipts, no justification, they were simply right. The next morning, as Sophie finished her second pot of coffee, the bell rang again. The wind brought more cold, and with it, him. Same jacket, same boots, same steady eyes that seemed to hold a lifetime of unspoken thoughts. He offered a faint note and went straight to the same booth, as if it had been reserved just for him. No hesitation, like he belonged there now. Sophie didn't wait for him to speak. "Coffee, plain, no sugar," she said with a gentle smile, her voice warm with familiarity. He chuckled softly, just enough to curve his lips, a rare glimpse of lightness in his quiet demeanor, and nodded. Sophie poured the coffee and added a little extra warm scone, baked just an hour ago, wrapped in a small napkin and set neatly beside the mug. Shep placed it down with care and whispered, "On the house." He glanced at the scone, then at her, not with surprise, but with something deeper, as if her gesture touched a long-forgotten corner of his heart. He didn't say thank you, but his eyes met hers, and that fleeting moment spoke louder than words ever could. He ate slowly, each bite thoughtful, not from hunger, but from a quiet reverence, as if savoring not just the food but the kindness behind it. When done, he wiped his fingers on the napkin and folded it neatly, leaving it like a small token of care. Again, he left coins on the table, mostly quarters, enough for coffee, Mabel's, and again, he left without a word, his boots echoing softly on the diner's worn floor. Sophie gathered the coins after he left and held them a moment longer than usual, their cool weight grounding her thoughts. She stared at the dirty napkin still on the table, spotless, as if he wanted to repay her kindness in his own small way. Second day straight, the cook muttered, flipping a pancake on the grill, his tone half teasing. "That guy sweet on you?" Sophie smiled faintly, her eyes lingering on the empty booth. Something about the man made joking feel out of place. He wasn't just a patron anymore. He'd woven himself into Heartwarming routine, like the hum of the coffee maker or the bell's gentle jingle. That evening, Sophie sat in the back booth during her break, watching twilight settle over the highway. The sky turned a soft purple, and the distant rumble of trucks felt like a heartbeat of the road. She thought of him, his silence, his nod, the scony, and how the smallest moments could carry the weight of something profound. Sometimes, she realized, the quietest gestures held the deepest meaning, like ripples spreading across a still pond. She gazed out the window, wondering if she'd see him again, her heart holding a quiet hope that their paths would cross once more. Day 3 began much like the others. The cold wind pressed hard against the diner's frosted windows, and Sophie's breath clouded the glass as she propped the door open with a wooden block. The sun was barely up, casting a pale glow over the empty parking lot when the bell chimed again. And there he was, same quiet arrival, same steady boots, their soles worn from countless miles. But this time, something shifted in his gaze, not just weariness or distance, but a hint of ease, like he was starting to feel at home in the small diner. He went straight to the window booth, his movements familiar, almost comforting. Sophie poured his coffee before he asked and set it down with a nod. "Morning," she said softly, her voice carrying a warmth that felt like a quiet promise. He nodded back, his eye shielding hers for a moment longer than usual. She didn't add a scone this time, only because a fresh muffin waited on the mirror, its aroma filling the air with a touch of sweetness. She walked away without another word, letting the moment linger. Later, as the diner filled with chatter from regulars and passing truckers, Sophie noticed something unusual. The man, Tom, though she didn't know his name, was bent over a chair near the counter. The busboy had struggled with it all week. Its front leg wobbled with every move, annoying everyone who sat there. Quietly, Tom took a napkin, folded it with care, and tucked it under the chair's leg. He pressed down, tested it, and nodded, satisfied with his small act of repair. No one had asked him. No one noticed it except Sophie, who stood behind the counter, her lips parting slightly in quiet awe. She said nothing, only watched, her heart swelling with a mix of admiration and curiosity. When he finished, he turned to his seat and sipped the last of his coffee, his movements unhurried, as if time moved differently for him. He left a smaller pile of coins, that day 3/4 and something else, a napkin folded in half, with a note in it, all capital letters, "Your kindness is worth more than $1. Thank you." No name, no flourish, just those simple words, heavy with meaning. Sophie held the napkin gently, as if it might break from the warmth in her hands. She read it twice, then again, her throat tightening with emotion. She swallowed it down, slipped the note into her apron pocket, and smiled to herself, a quiet joy blooming in her chest. As he left, she glanced at the window for the first time. He turned back before the door shut, just for a moment, just enough to meet her eyes with a look that felt like a shared secret, and then he was gone again. The bells jingle fading into the morning air. Day arrived, but the booth by the window stayed empty. Sophie poured the morning coffee anyway, as she always did, her hands moving with the rhythm of habit. She kept the pot hot, its steam curling like a quiet hope. She wiped the tablet twice, her cloth lingering on the surfaces, if to summon him back. She even placed a folded napkin on the table's corner, half hoping, half believing he'd walk through the door. But the bell never rang for him. Regulars came and went, their voices filling the diner with familiar banter. A few new truckers stopped by, ordering waffles and asking for extra syrup, their laughter loud but fleeting. One even sat in his booth, his presence adjuring in a space that felt reserved. Sophie caught herself frowning, a pang of disappointment tugging at her heart. She quickly forced a smile and turned away, busying herself with refilling sugar jars. The napkin with his note stayed in her apron pocket all day, a quiet weight against her side. Day 5 came, and still, there was no sign of him. Sophie's thoughts wandered as worked. Maybe his route had shifted, or maybe he was called away unexpectedly. Truckers led unpredictable lives, Shek knew, their days dictated by the road's demands. but a heavy feeling settled in her chest like a stone she couldn't shake. That night, as snow dusted Maple Grove, Sophie stayed late, wiping all Rediclean tables and refilling full sugar jars, her movements slow and deliberate. The cook had left, the lights were low, and the diner felt quieter than ever. She stood by the window, watching headlights fade into the dark, their beams cutting through the falling snow. "You okay, Sophie?" the busboy asked, pulling on his coat, his voice soft with concern. She nodded, but her eyes stayed on the highway, searching for a familiar figure. "Just quiet without him here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who?" he asked, but she didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the napkin with the note. She had smoothed it flat and folded it carefully each day, its edges softening from her touch. It felt like more than words. Now, like a piece of a story waiting for its end. By day 6, the booth was still empty. Sophie sat there on her break, sipping her own coffee, the mug warm against her hands. No muffin, no coins, no quiet nods or fleeting glances. The chair he'd fixed stood perfectly steady, a silent reminder of his presence. She traced the rim of her mug with her finger and whispered to Noon, "Hope you're okay, Tom." Or whoever you are. She'd never asked his name, but somehow it felt like she knew him better than most who passed through those doors. Yet now, he seemed to have vanished, leaving only memories and a folded napkin in her pocket. Her heart ached with acquiescent longing, not for answers, but for the comfort of his familiar presence. On day 7, Sophie walked into Maple Grove Diner with the same hope she'd carried for 3 days, that the door would chime, and the man in the canvas jacket would walk in, nod quietly, and sit in his booth like nothing had changed. But instead, she found the cook flipping through the morning paper, a grin on his face, his eyes bright with excitement. "You'll want to see this," he said, handing her the paper with a playful nudge. Sophie wiped her hands on her apron and took it. Her curiosity piqued. He pointed to a small ad circled in red on page 12, its text small but striking. She read it softly, her voice barely above a whisper, each word sinking into her heart. "To few Waitress at Maple Grove Diner, you showed an old man what kindness means. You made him feel noticed, so I made some calls." It was signed Tom or below. In bold print, "Free coffee for all truckers all July, paid in full." Sophie froze, her lips parted, her breath catching in her throat. She reread it, her hands trembling slightly, the paper crinkling under her fingers. The cook pointed to a small image beside the scanned receipt from TR Transco showing a $1,000 transfer to the diner's owner. Herman raced, piecing together the wait office gesture. Before she could speak, the owner emerged from the back, holding a sealed envelope, his expression soft but knowing. "This came in yesterday's mail. No return address, but it's for you." Inside was a personal check for $500 made out to her name, and something even more moving. A hand-drawn sketch of a steaming coffee mug, warmth swirling upward, with words. Beneath in uneven capital letters, "Some roads lead home, others lead to people like you." Sophie blinked fast, her eyes stinging as tried to steady herself. She let out a small laugh, caught in her throat, filled with gratitude, disbelief, and something deeper connection. The words on the napkin, the check, the ad, they were more than gestures. They were a bridge between two souls who had met in the quiet moments of a diner. She stepped outside during her break, wrapping her arms against the breeze, the cold biting. Her cheeks, the sun had pierced the gray, casting a warm glow over the highway. Semis rolled by, their engines a steady hum, each one a reminder of the man who had sat in her booth. She stood at the lot's edge, eyes fixed on the road, and whispered, "Hope you were out there, Tom." "Coffee's still on." Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of a promise. 2 weeks later, the diner hung a new wooden sign, carefully carved above the front door. It read, "Tom's Nook, Coffee for Truckers, free every July." The words were simple, but they held a story that had changed the diner forever. And just like that, a quiet man who paid in coins had given back something greater than any check could offer. He reminded a small-town waitress that small kindnesses could reach across roads and hearts alike, leaving a legacy that would linger long after he was gone. Sophie stood beneath the sign, her fingers brushing the napkin in her pocket, and smiled. Some stories, she thought, didn't need endings they lived on in the warmth they left behind.